Today on Locked On Red Wings, Scotty and I react to Steve Yzerman's training camp press conference, as well as go over the training camp roster for this upcoming season.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for WWJ News Radio 950, and Scotty is the host of Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And Scotty, as of the time people are listening to this, training camp is here. It has officially begun Thursday, September 22nd. And as we're recording this here on Wednesday, though, the roster has come out. Steve Yzerman has spoken. You, Scotty, were fortunate enough to be able to watch the press conference. I followed it on Twitter as best I could, but I was at work while it was happening because Red Wings always do these press conferences in the middle of the freaking day when everyone's at work. I don't know how I expect anyone to watch, but you were able to watch. So I'm going to throw it over to you. I want you to kind of just give me your thoughts on what was said, and hey, we'll talk about it. We'll break it down.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't it wasn't some revolutionary, like, oh my goodness, a bunch of breaking news is dropping left and right. Like, it was a Steve Yzerman press conference. You know what I mean? Like, not a whole lot was honestly said. A lot was said, but not a whole lot was said. You feel
it's like
me?
You got to read between the lines really hard.
Yeah. So there was definitely, 3 or 4 things that stood out that you can kind of analyze, and he did answer questions. He wasn't just like beating around the bush and not, answering the questions that were given to him. But there was a lot of, like in between, or like it's too early, which is I don't even think that's GM talk. I think that's just true. Like, like everyone was asking about Edvinson like every 5 seconds, and he's like, guys, I don't know. Like, we haven't seen him play. Like, I don't know. Like, he looked good in the prospect tournament. But I think his close to his exact wording when asked about Edvinson was that it is, which is reassuring, that it is a decision that'll be made during camp in the preseason. And he said he'll play minutes. He'll play enough minutes to get a look and get enough playing time in the preseason. But he also said that the key to where to put Edvinson was he didn't say, oh, if he's just straight up talented enough, he's going to be on the Red Wings roster. The thing that he made very apparent, which I agree with, even though, in a perfect world, you'd like to see him ASAP, was he's going to go wherever he's going to get the most playing time. That was like what he was very adamant on, was Edvinson might be good enough. He might be today, as we're having this conversation, he might be better than all of our, third line, our third pairing defensemen, right? Like that's totally a reasonable argument if you're really high on him. But at the end of the day, like I said, Yzerman really drove home the point that he's going to go where he's going to get prominent playing time and enough opportunity to develop. And if he is so good in the preseason that he plays himself to getting good playing time at the NHL level, then he'll be at the NHL level right away. But if he's still kind of in that in-between phase, they're definitely going to err on the side of patience and not rush him for no reason and give him, 8 minutes a night on the third pairing. They'd rather give him, 28 in Grand Rapids. So,
I mean, everything you said there just aligns with what Steve Yzerman has said in the past regarding him, and it aligns with his philosophy with young players is, like you said, having them play in a place where they're going to get the most minutes, like Jonathan Berggren last year, like Joe Veleno this past year, going to a place where they're going to have the most impact. I believe I read on Twitter that Yzerman also said something along the lines that if Edvinson is going to play in the NHL, he wants him to be a consistent, everyday, like top 6, which makes sense. I mean, obviously, but he also believes, and this is as close to a definitive he's going to make the team that Steve Yzerman's ever going to give you, but he says he believes he has a real good chance of making the NHL. But like then he's like, but you have to wait and see how he looks in camp because
Right.
he of course went over. He did a good job, I think, of kind of what's the word I'm looking for with the expectations, kind of
Tampering.
tampering expectations. Thank you. Regarding the
Writer.
comparisons to, he's a writer. Wait, hold on. I got you.
Oh, man. I always forget about that. There we go. There we go.
Comparing Seider to Edvinson. He's like, Simon Edvinson doesn't have that extra year that Moritz Seider. Moritz Seider, because of the pandemic, after his year in Grand Rapids, went overseas to the SHL. Simon Edvinson doesn't have that. He says Simon Edvinson played in the SHL last year. He looked really good. He played amongst men. But it's like basically was trying to, well, I don't want to say he was trying to imply because that's my interpretation. I inferred from that he was trying to say, don't hold Edvinson to Seider's bar because that's just unfair. He's like, Edvinson has a good chance of making the team, but don't expect him to be Seider, which I think is completely reasonable thing to ask.
Yeah, for sure. And well, we've been trying to talk about that and try and tell people that all off season. We're like, hey, it's not fair to compare anybody to Mo, kind of a thing. But yep, that was that was definitely a question that he got quite a lot, just because
I
it's
bet.
probably the biggest question, going into camp, and people just kept rewording the same thing, and we're trying to get him to like spill a little bit more, and it didn't work because it's Steve Yzerman. But I mean, what he kind of asked about expectations a little bit. Didn't really play his hand too terribly much there. In certain questions, he talked about the insinuation of if in the second half, I forget what question it was specifically, but he said in the second half of the year, if we are playing meaningful hockey and making a playoff push, it was about the Canada vaccine limitations being much more.
It's being lifted, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is being completely lifted.
Because I remember reading that in regards to baseball, and so obviously that would apply to the NHL.
Right. So somebody asked him about Bert and was like, hey, like Bert now, if assuming Bert's still not vaccinated, like that's a whole lot of games more that you're getting. You know what I mean? That's
another 10 games.
An eighth of your schedule, basically, that you're, one of your best players gets to play in now. And he answered and said, basically, like, those points matter, obviously, and it's good to have Bert in the lineup and all that. And then, at the end was kind of like, if in the second half of the year, if we're actually making a playoff push and like are playing competitive, meaningful hockey in the second half of the season, like then those games mean even more and those points mean even more and such. But also talked about earlier in the presser, talked about like we're taking steps in the right direction. I don't have we need to reach this mark in order to, in order for me to be pleased and whatnot. He's not looking for a point total, not looking for whatever. So very Steve Yzerman-esque, but I mean, with the moves he made in the offseason, doesn't really need to say like, oh, I think we need to be this good. Like we all know that this team should be better. Like they had a huge offseason. We have almost an entirely different blue line. Like we, you know what I mean? Like we made so many moves and signed so many free agents. Like obviously this team should be better. So that's not really too terribly, I don't know. That answer to me, or what his answer, no matter what it was going to be, wasn't really too big on my end there. But there's for sure.
I mean, he just says the things that make the most sense.
Correct.
Especially in regards to the team and how well they should perform. I mean, we've been talking about it, all summer. Obviously, Yzerman went out there and he knows he made moves to make the team better, but he also knows that it's a team in transition with a first-year head coach. Right. You got probably going to have a bunch of young guys on the team. This quote,
okay? This is like the exact thing. I believe we'll be a better hockey team this year. I expect us to be. Having said that, with a lot of changes, it can take some time for certain things to settle in. Hopefully, it translates to more wins, though. Like, yeah, right? Like, yeah, I agree, Steve. We should be better, but it also could take a little while to settle in because we have so many different personnel and, behind the bench, on the ice, etc. Like, yeah, that's completely true. So,
Absolutely. There were some injury updates as well out of this press conference from
yeah.
Steve Yzerman, and we'll give you those when we come back. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news and podcasts, including this year's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. During the press conference, actually, mostly just opened with it, if I recall correctly. The injury updates on the players. The Red Wings tweeted it out. Andrew Kopp had abdominal surgery in the offseason. He's expected to be back first week of the regular season. He's on the training camp roster, but I believe he's expected to miss the preseason, which is just makes sense. Why risk aggravating the injury? One, your regulars don't really play a whole lot in preseason anyways. Like in any sport, your regulars don't play a whole lot. So why put him out there, risk re-aggravating an injury that's not 100% healed? Wait until the games matter, then play him. Jake Wollman, obviously we know he was out, I believe. There's so many injuries, I can never keep them straight in my head. I believe he was shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
And he's going to be back in mid-November. Robbie Fabry and Mark Pysyk are both expected to be out until around the new year, shortly after the new year. I think we talked about that, and we both kind of predicted like it wouldn't be until after the new year or All-Star break, that span. And then Chase Pearson is out indefinitely with personal reasons. We don't know the reasons. We won't speculate on the reasons, but he is out. Out of those 5 players, does anything catch your eye, catch you off guard?
No, I mean, they're all expected except for Pearson, right? And like, obviously, hope everything's okay with him. But no, I mean, it's this is all like we knew all this
Yeah.
besides him. So,
Well, did we know about Kopp? I don't remember hearing about Kopp's injury.
I'm pretty sure we knew that he
I
had
didn't know he had
something done in the
surgery. That or I forgot.
offseason. Unless I might be making this up, but I'm pretty sure we knew like he did, like he had something happen over the offseason, but he'd be back
Somebody go
like
back and
around
listen to our
opening
old
night.
episodes and let us know if we knew about this or not. But regardless, he'll be.
I might be thinking of Pysyk or something. I might be just making this up, but I thought we knew about that. Regardless, I mean he's not going to miss serious time, so
Yeah,
whatever.
he'll be back first week of the season, so that's reassuring. Robbie Fabry is a really interesting case. I mean, obviously, Pysyk and Wallman are interesting cases just from the standpoint that the defense, there's so many bodies back there. I won't call it deep, but there's so many bodies back there. I wonder how it'll shake out when they're healthy, but especially with Robbie Fabry, because Fabry's like a very good middle 6 forward winger.
For sure.
But this is a very deep forward core now, especially down the sides. Center depth is still shaky. We got centers.
There's a
but
lot
the
of
depth
bodies.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of bodies. So how it'll shake out when he returns is going to be really interesting for me to see, because will he be good enough coming back from his 3rd ACL tear to bump somebody off the
Right.
second line? I mean, my knee jerk, my gut feeling is probably no, but
I
we've been
would also
proven
say
wrong
no. Yeah.
before. But if he, even at the third
It's a
line
hell of a
level,
third liner, though.
who's he bumping down, because you already have a hell of a third line.
Yeah. True.
It's
Yeah.
the
No, I mean, you're going to have some at
questions.
full strength. You're going to have some legit winger depth on this team. It's going to be really exciting. Yeah. Like you said, center depth is obviously still something we're going to circle and keep an eye on. And I think that kind of circles back into, he was asked about Bergeron at one point, and I think he gave a pretty similar answer about, wherever he's going to get the most playing time. I also want to go just really quick about Edvinson. I believe he said, actually, I know he said in one of the questions about Edvinson, because again, there were like 40, but one of them, he did say he liked his odds, or like there was like a chance, or like a solid chance, or he might have even said good chance. Like he did. I don't want to make it sound like it was
He said
totally
good
just he went
chance.
up. Right. I don't want to make it sound like he just went up there. And I feel like in the first segment when I was talking about it, I made it sound like he had like zero clue at all, which he hasn't seen him play, and that will obviously determine it. But I think he cited a lot of stuff that he did in the SHL last year and just talked about how good he thought he looked then and stuff. So I'm not trying to make it sound like, that there's a really small chance or anything, or that Yzerman went up there and just said, oh, who knows? But because I think he did use the words like solid chance or good chance. So there is, something there. I just, but then again, like back to the conversation at hand, like Berggren was asked as well, and that's obviously another forward that in this team you're looking at for that forward depth we just talked about, and somebody that might be able to help the center depth situation. But again, like he had that one, he also stressed playing time, playing time. He also said he really liked what he saw out of him last year, which is something that was kind of a debate between some Red Wing circles, right? About how Berggren looked. Like that was a really common topic, especially when he was up, right? And so hearing Steve go up there and be like, yeah, I really liked what we saw out of him last year. He did everything we asked of him last season. We'll see what happens this year kind of a thing. And that was what a lot of the individual player stuff was. It was like we'll see. I think maybe I'm leaning this way, but we'll see. So
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of Steve Yzerman in a nutshell right there. Is
for sure.
sit on that fence so you don't get anything. Was there
Correct.
anything else that he said that stood out? I know he did talk a little bit about the Scott Harris thing that was mentioned in yesterday's episode.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like all he said was just stuff about like he did talk to him and like that he really likes him. So like I'm sure that I mean when one of the most iconic figures in the history of the city likes you, like that definitely can't hurt. I'm not saying
It's a
that
hell of
that's
an
the reason
endorsement.
he was the one that Illich picked, but like yeah, he did talk about it. Was like yeah, like I talked to him, like I really like him, and the Yzerman even said that he wants to keep talking to him and he wants to pick his brain because he thinks Harris is like a fantastic executive that's like going to be super successful here and wants to like pick his brain about how to be a better like executive and stuff. So
Could we talk too about the way they met? Is Brendan Shanahan took Steve Yzerman to a Cubs game at Wrigley
yeah, and
Field.
Wrigley, yeah,
That doesn't answer the question as to why Brendan Shanahan was taking Steve Yzerman to a game at Wrigley Field. Like,
I don't
that's such
know.
an odd.
Shanahan goes to I mean he there have been several I guess I don't really know. I mean, it's Wrigley Field. Like if you're in town, like, everybody loves saying they've been to
Yeah.
Wrigley Field. Like it's at a, iconic historic sports venue. But yeah, I don't really know. I guess I don't really know. You know
Yeah.
who's always at Cubs and White Sox games
Why
is
would I know
Chelios,
that?
dude. Chelios is always there.
That
Always.
doesn't surprise me because he's always had more of an affinity to Chicago than he did Detroit because
For sure.
he spent the longest in Detroit
It's
technically,
so
but
funny whenever the Tigers go to because he goes to when the Tigers are in town, like he goes, like those are the two, like big teams for him. So like he goes to the games and we always interview him and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, like good to, everything's cool. And it's just like it's such a nonchalant interview. He's just like in a t-shirt in like the fourth row. And he's just like giving a TV interview about like baseball, and you're like, okay. But anyway, back to the presser. I think the only other thing that really, I mean, it really was just a lot of like, we'll wait and see. That was the biggest thing I got out of it, was like, okay, I'm really excited for the first press conference after the preseason because then I feel like we'll actually get some substance in here. But yeah, the only other thing, like he was asked about Lalonde and just how he's been so far in the offseason and what they've talked about and why, we haven't really gotten to pick Steve's brain about like why Lalonde was the overwhelming guy. And I think the biggest reason he said was communication. Like that was the thing he kept driving home, was like his his best trait was his communication skill. He's a highly talented person, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, not too much substance in it, but it's always cool to be able to try and ask Steve Yzerman questions at least. So yeah.
take a shot at asking him a question, see if he even answers it.
Right. I'm trying to think. Was it Prashant at the deadline last year where he asked him something about like, oh, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like, is this person on the block or is this person on the market or something? And Steve was like, what do you think? And I was like, whoa, whoa. It wasn't like aggressive or like rude. He was like, what do you think? And
No,
he's like,
he did that
I
to
don't
I think it was
know.
on Sarkhan of M
Oh.
Live.
Mm.
I think I know what you're referring to.
I'm trying to remember. No, I know Nolan and I talked about it on the show. You can probably go back and find it, but
I remember that. It was a sassy Yzerman moment. It was pretty great.
yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I've broke down 2 press conferences on between this show and the Tigers show in the last 24 hours, and the last one had a lot more substance in it. I'll tell you that. There was really not a whole lot of weight in this one, but like I said, still a cool moment, and still again, anytime you can put Steve in front of a mic, it's going to be people are going to tune in, and I enjoyed hearing what he had to say about all the players. It sounds like he really thinks that the team is headed in a good direction, and if it wasn't, I'm not sure he'd be as vocal about it. So
That's true. So we're going to go to our second break here. And when we come back, we're going to go over the training camp roster. There's a lot of names on that list. A lot of names, as is every training camp. And we'll do our best to tell you a little bit about as many people as possible. I won't say everyone because that'll be impossible. But we'll do that when we come back. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. We're going to look at this training camp roster now and just talk a little bit about some of the people on it. And if you watched any of the prospects tournament, a lot of these names aren't going to be much of a surprise for you. You'll recognize a lot of the guys that you maybe would not have recognized prior. But this is the full roster.
Yeah, so the fascinating thing to me is if you like zoom into the bottom there, the key of like you can kind of highlights which players are signed by Grand Rapids and which ones are
readjusting back
camp
to being small
and such. You know what I mean? I think that's the kind of the thing to look at for when you're looking over the training camp roster.
Yeah, so obviously you have the first thing I did when I looked at this roster is like, okay, where's Riley Piercy? He's still there.
Yep.
He's hanging on, which of course, I mean, he's an invitee to training camp, so he wouldn't be gone yet. But I was like, I'm rooting for you, man. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
Another guy that stood out to me, he's another camp invitee, Jeremy, and I'm gonna try my best to get this last name right because we didn't mention him during the prospects tournament, but he was a +4.
I believe in you.
Jeremy Biakabutukua. Batuka. I literally, Scotty.
There's no way that was right, but I don't know if I could do any better. So
hold on, let me phonetics this out. Biakabutukua.
Biakabutuka.
Biakabutuka. I think you got it. Biakabutuka. So Jeremy Biakabutuka. No, I think that's right.
I appreciate you.
I think that's good. It's close. It's closer than mine.
Yeah, but there's no
+4.
accent marks or anything on this page.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be pretty confident that has like, I don't know, maybe at least one. Anyway.
He was a +4 in the prospects tournament. We didn't really mention it because he was one of those guys who kind of was underlying impressiveness. He wasn't.
For sure. No, he was solid.
Goals. Yeah, he was on the ice and he was an impact player when he was on the ice, but he didn't necessarily it didn't translate to goals and assists for him. But he was out there and a positive impact when he was on the ice. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to him. But as you can see, you got Philip Zadina, you got Robbie Fabry, which is nice to see that he has been invited to training camp. But so is Mark Pysyk. I don't know how much these guys are going to be involved in training camp when they're still recovering from these huge injuries.
For sure.
Probably very limited when they're still a good 3 months away from coming back to the ice. But you got Andrew Kopp, you got Austin Zarnik, Matt Luff, Lucas Raymond, Pew Suter, Taro Hirose, Pontus Andreasen, which don't forget the Red Wings signed Pontus Andreasen, who lit it up in the SHL this last year. He and Edvinson were 2 of the rookie finalists for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, people forget, man.
He could be a surprise out of training camp, so keep him in mind. You got Rasmussen, Chris Kulo, Pierce. Well, not Pearson. He's taking some time off. Giovanni Smith, Dominic Shine, who's signed by the Grand Rapids Griffins, Bergeron, Zito, Perron. There he is. Piercy, Bertuzzi, Uberti, who is a camp invitee. Drew Woodward. Sorry, I want Woodward. I guess is
Woodward.
just that's just
It's the Detroit in him.
It's a Detroit in him. Warrid. That's a French last name. I'm not even going to attempt. Oscar
Lesperance.
Stunquist. Thank you. Okay, you got it.
It's not too
Dylan
bad.
Larkin, Trenton Bliss, Adam Ernie, Cross Hannis, Cedric Lacroix, Tyler Spezia, Amadeus Lombardi, Kirill Tutayev. I know
Nice.
it now. Dominic Kubalik, Marcus Limparlance, Julian Anstill, Elmer Soderblom, Ivan, Jacob Matthew, Joe Valeno, Mitchell Martin. And that's all the forwards, guys. So it goes on from there.
It's actually
There is a lot of guys.
Not even all the forwards. You have a whole nother row there if you really wanted to.
No, those are defense. It's weird.
No.
This bottom part. Defense,
no, you're right. You're
over.
right. I didn't actually read the list. Yeah, you're correct.
But yeah, so any of these guys that stand out to you, Scotty, that you want to go over real quick and just like give a quick shout out to?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, like I'm glad that they were I'm glad that they were just like handing out camp invites. Like, why not? Yeah. I'm glad that a lot of the players in the prospect tournaments are at least getting camp invites. That's super cool for them. Super cool for us. Get to see how they look matched up against, the NHL product. Really liked the and like, like I like the fact that Soderblom's there, but like he was obviously going to be, you know what I mean? Like not necessarily surprises, I don't think, no, but I'm just glad to see I'm just glad to see all these names on a sheet of paper. Like I'm really pumped to just see Red Wings hockey again. I do like the fact that like I said, I really like the fact that they were super just like okay, just handing out camp invites to a lot of these guys. I like Ivan getting a look. I mean, even Mitchell Martin made a couple of nice plays in the prospect tournament. So yeah, super cool. I don't think there's anybody that I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't think there's any surprises though.
No, there's not. I mean, there's two guys I want to point out though, for sure, for training camp here, that we haven't been giving a lot of attention to lately. Not our fault. There hasn't been any news on them. But Jared McIsaac and then UC Ulki Nuora. Jared McIsaac obviously wasn't at prospects tournament. He's a guy that you want to keep an eye on who's had a pretty decent last couple of years, who very shortly here could be on the cusp of making the NHL roster. So keep an eye on him during training camp and preseason, see how he performs. The same with UC Ulki Niora. They signed him out of Europe this last offseason. And I was immediately, I still am not really sure what the game plan is with him, especially now you've traded for Ville Husso and you have Jan
Right.
Bednar, who played really well in the prospects tournament. You had Sebastian Cossa. And that's another thing. Yzerman didn't want to commit to where Cossa was playing, either ECHL or AHL. And so,
Well,
I mean, there's
when asked about him, he was like, we have a ton of options with him, right? Like, like with the other dudes, he kind of was talking about, like I said, most playing time, like best situation, whatever. When he was asked about Costa, he was like, we could put him like anywhere on the planet. like we can, put him wherever we see fit, and mentioned again playing time with him as well. So
yeah, so it's going to be interesting because obviously Victor Brattstrom's going to be in the AHL. He's one of the goaltenders for the Grand Rapids Griffins, but it's just who's going to be there with him. Will it be Costa? Will it be Bednar? Will it be Ulki Nuora? I mean, obviously there's going to be cuts. There's other goalies on here as well, and Oki, and Lethaman as well. I mean, what are you going to do with these guys? Oki was a camp invite. Lethelman's already signed by the Grand Rapids Griffins, but so what are you going to do with these three other goalies that you have under contract? I mean, that makes it seem as if Costa is going to go to the Toledo Walleye then, but on Elite Prospects, he's already listed as Grand Rapids Griffins, so not that Elite Prospects knows everything. It's an interesting goaltending situation where
Yzerman mentioned
you have a lot
Toledo
of guys
by name, yeah.
The Toledo Walleye. I mean, it would make sense. That's that's professional hockey that he can play, and it's a step up from the WHL, but it's not so high of a step up that he could get shelled in the AHL. So it would make sense. I think the fan in me would just like it if you could go faster, but I know that's not realistic when talking about goaltending development. Yeah, exactly.
The goalie, yeah. It doesn't really matter where he's playing this year. He's got several years until he's in the NHL, presumably. So,
But all right, any other final thoughts for this episode before we wrap it up? And then tomorrow, Friday's episode, we're going to get into actual training camp news.
I'm pumped.
I'm so excited.
I can't wait for like the first like training camp video of just like dudes skating like half-assed, and you're just like, this is awesome.
That guy's a stud. Look at him.
I cannot wait. Look how good Edvinson's skating right here. He's doing like
So smooth.
He's doing like a blue line drill. You're just like, this dude is amazing.
He's got it. He's the one.
No, I don't think so. I think yeah, we ball. I'm just really pumped for everyday shows, everyday content, everyday just Red Wings again. Really,
I'm pumped
really
to
glad we're here.
talking to you every day. Honestly.
I know.
3 days a week wasn't enough.
I agree.
I'll pump that up. All right.
Back
Good.
to 5. Yeah, we definitely never speak outside of the show.
Honestly, as soon as I exit out of this tab, man, it's like radio silence until we hop back on it tomorrow. So
yeah, we definitely only spoke 3 days a week the entire summer. Yeah,
somebody will leave you on red, so you know.
That's actually probably fair. Yeah.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow with a new episode. Same time, same place. It's your team every day. Where's my cursor? There it is. Bye.
Nice.